Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and today I want to talk to you about the Warp Bane Task Force, the Grey Knight detachment from the Grotmus detachment releases, and the Teleport Assault, the Index Grey Knight detachment that we've had. These two are the only detachments right now we have access to with Grey Knights. And a lot of times I'm receiving a lot of questions on people asking, which detachment's better? They both seem very good. They both have a lot of abilities. Do you miss using this? Do you miss that? And this is a lot to unpack. There's sometimes when I receive a comment in the comment section, I start to write it and it looks like a novel. And it got to a point where I'm like, you know what? This is something to actually talk about in a video and discuss this. Now, remember, this is an opinion piece. This is my opinion. And as you'll see with some of these attachments, what I may prefer and not prefer, I'm very, very positive that both of these detachments are strong and just depend on what you're feeling for your playstyle for a given list. Some of this is going to base down to some of the units that you want to use, as both detachments kind of use different units. There are some similar units, but for the most part, they are able to access some things that we're not seeing in the other detachment. So it does fall into a sense of what type of units you want to use and also your playstyle, because both of these are very different. The Grotmus detachment is a more aggressive detachment. It's more based on damage, doing damage, and being efficient with it. While the Teleport Assault, the Index, is a more defensive detachment and bases a lot more on being able to be precise and a specialized force to hit in an area and then be able to pick up and move into another area. They were the first ones to really use the up-down abilities in the game. And so this army had the ability to bounce around in such ways. So first, let's start off with the Warp Bane detachment. Let's dive deeper into this one. This is the offensive detachment, as I put it. And the reason why I feel that way is because of the detachment special rule. The detachment special rule gives you hollowed ground. So you have reroll ones for your entire army. However, if anything is hollowed ground, you have full rerolls to hit. Now, not just shooting and fighting, both. Full rerolls to hit. This includes Overwatch too. So how you're hollowed ground? Well, it's simple. Two ways. One, if you are wholly within your deployment zone, if you control at least half the objective markers in no man's land, that the center no man's land becomes a hollowed ground. Your home field is always hollowed ground, excuse me. And if you control your opponent's deployment zone, that is or objective marker, their deployment zone is hollowed ground. This is checked at the beginning of any phase. So you can move onto an objective and have this for the shooting phase. You can charge onto an objective and have it for the fight phase. Very strong ability, especially because it gives an entire area of the field full rerolls to hit. Now there is a second way you can have this. Being a purifier. Purifiers get full rerolls to hit all the time. They are always considered on hollow ground. Even more so, they're also beacons for hollow ground, as they also give out a aura that any unit within 6 inches of them is considered on hollowed ground. This is very, very strong for stacking with the stratagem that they have that allows you to drop a unit, deep strike them in, wholly within hollowed ground, and if they are, they can drop in within just outside of 6 inches of an enemy unit. And they can still charge. Pairing that with something like Drago means you have 2 units that could drop in with 6-inch charges. That's a lot of aggression there, especially because now if you charge onto their home field objective and you take it in the charge phase, because you're charging with, like, I like Strike because of the OC2, and you take that objective in the charge phase, now you're re-rolling hits in the fight phase. Very nice, very strong stratagem. And like I said, pair it with Drago, you have you have 2 units that can do this. Purifiers as well, they have access to some of the really strong stratagems out of here. 1, 4-up invulnerable save in the shooting phase. And 2, just because they're a purifier, they get the second tier of the full rerolls to wound strat. There's a 1 command point strat that gives you reroll 1s to wound. But if you're a purifier, you get full rerolls to wound. So purifiers are already rerolling all hits because of being purifiers in the hollow ground. Now you can go into rerolls to wound. Yes, it's scary that psi cannons are only AP1, but a unit that can deep strike land and put those psi cannons right into something's face, makes them think about using that Armor of Contempt over there, makes them think about burning that. And then if they're still making 3-ups on, whatever Marine type model it is that's not Terminator, you still have a chance of doing a lot of damage. Purifiers have that cleansing fire, which with the re-rolling hits is anti-infantry 2-up with AP1 and ignores cover. You have the bolter fire, which is just a lot of fire. And like I said, the side cannons, which are 2 damage apiece, 3 shots, that re-rolling the hits and then potentially re-rolling the wounds means you're putting your opponent in a position where they're going to have to make a lot of saves. That cleansing fire really takes it over the edge. On top of the fact that the unit that's led by Crow, I typically put him in a squad with 4 flamers. They're going to be re-rolling hits. Okay, doesn't matter for the torrent, but when you spend that 1 command point to re-roll wounds for that unit, that means the flamers are now re-rolling wounds at strength 6, AP 1, 1 damage, ignore cover, torrent. Your cleansing fire now has gone up from 1 shot to 2 per guy, so that's 20 shots out of a 10-man, re-rolling hits, wounding on 2s, re-rolling wounds. I'm assuming he's shooting into infantry, excuse me. And then the bolters on top of it. That unit can shred infantry, on top of being a massive overwatch threat, again, because of the re-rolls and the incinerators that don't need to roll to hit. Very, very strong overwatch unit. This army also allows access to some units that we don't typically use in the teleport strike. While Dreadknights are still really, really good, I'm starting to get a little concerned with that toughness 8. I feel like as of late, there's a lot more weapons in the game and a lot more damage in the game that's hitting them and just really causing their wounds to drop very fast because of the toughness 8. They do have a 2-up, 4-up, but when weapons are coming through that are able to just bring them to a 3-up, smaller weapons and just volume, it's getting kind of concerning. I'm using the Dreadknights pretty quickly, and it's like when I put them out to shoot at something and I do keep them further back, I still end up usually losing them in the next turn. Oath of Moment is pretty rough to get through at that point. And so those guys end up going pretty quickly, per se. But there's still a very strong choice out of here because now you're taking a unit that already has been a staple in other lists previous before the data sheets and stuff, and giving them full rerolls to hit. Still a lot of value behind it. But now let's get over into that teleport strike force. So the teleport strike force detachment special rule is definitely the weaker of the 2. Auto advance 6. That's it. That's all it is. So you either have this crazy rule that gives you full rerolls to hit, shooting and fighting for your army, or auto advance 6. Winner. So that's obvious. But out of that detachment, that's not what we're taking it for. And when I talk about taking defense and offense in that aspect, the defensive perks that you get out of the teleport assault are massive. Very, very strong abilities. First, the stratagems. Number 1 of probably the best stratagems in the entire game for a long time. May have dropped down now, but it was for a while. Mistademos. Mistademos is a strat that if your opponent ends their movement or starts their movement, or maybe it's only end, within 9 inches, you spend a command point and can either move your unit 6 inches or take them off the battlefield and put them into reserve to then deep strike back in the next turn. Very, very powerful, especially because that allows you to put a unit down, hit some stuff, do some damage, and get them out of there. And there's so much tech off of Mistademos. Number 1, you drop in with a unit that's going to overwatch. Your opponent goes to move a unit, you overwatch, and then Mistademos to disappear. Then, in either of these scenarios, even if you don't use an overwatch and try and stack that, since that unit was on the battlefield, they're eligible to then rapid ingress. So even if you don't overwatch, you just pick them up with a mist, you can then rapid ingress them back down after your opponent ends moving and put them in a safe spot and get ready to charge and fight for the next turn. A lot, super, super cool for a lot of jumping around abilities and being able to really play tricksy with your opponent. Now, a lot of players are a little more seasoned to it, especially because other armies can do it as well. We're seeing a lot more armies that are able to not trigger Mistademos, but it's still a mental giant for your opponent to have to play around, because it's one command point and there's really no way of stopping you from doing it. You can't turn off that stratagem. So it's always going to be a threat across the entire game. Also, we have one of the strats that I really like, especially for the purifiers, is the us count your weapons as assault, and I believe it's reroll hits too. With the auto advance 6, it let me be able to take a squad of purifiers. I take a 10-man, I took the incinerators, I had Crow leading them, and I would be able to start them on the table, and if my opponent got aggressive and came into me, I could then move the unit 12 inches, and for one command point, treat all their guns as assault, and really be able to hammer an infantry squad that tried to get brave and get into my deployment zone early, and I was able to bring them up there. That's another one that I really like. Otherwise, everything else does kind of tweak into some more damage aspects of it. Oh, we have True Silver Armor. True Silver Armor, I don't feel anything for, because of the fact that Armor Contempt also got nerfed. So I feel like if we didn't have this new Grotmus detachment and I was still playing Teleport Assault, I feel like it just kind of makes me less likely to just spend a command point on it because it's nerfed. I tend to not spend a command point on that really too much. Usually with that 2-up armor save that we have army-wide, you putting things in cover usually helps enough. And now that you've made it only for one set of attack sequences, I don't think I necessarily use it as much. There's other defensive plays that I'd rather use the CP into than that. Also, CP management. Not saying I won't use it for it. It just kind of, I leer it away. Now, like I said, the other strats just kind of deal more on the damage side of things, and that nothing too crazy in the aspect of when we're comparing between the two and the Warp Bane. Warp Bane's still going to come out on top for the amount of damage they're able to do. But when we get over into the enhancements, there's two very important enhancements to Grey Knights. Number one, this one is how I feel. When I was first running Grey Knights and I did really well at a GT, one of the positive spins of things was the only games that I didn't go first, I was going into Imperial Knights. And Imperial Knights at that time, without any way to knock away cover, was a very, very good matchup for me for the style of list I was playing with a lot of MSU. They weren't really able to get through the 2-up save, and I did have True Silver Armor to help me in those scenarios. Those were the games that I ended up going first. Other games, I ended up going second. And second is a very, very strong place for Grey Knights to play out of, because we're able to pick up, have units that are able to drop in and score some secondaries early that we might not be able to, and set up for a defensive position to move into later turns of the game. Going second is always stronger. With the Teleport Assault, we get an enhancement that helps in those scenarios. And after I started using it, it was basically an auto-include in every single one of my lists. I felt like it was so necessary so that I could drop in on turn one. So I could be able to spread my board out efficiently and accurately for how I was playing the army. Typically, I took it on a Grandmaster with 10 Terminators, so I could then drop a 10-man brick of OC3 Terminators defensively on an objective on turn one and start playing from there. If my opponent came into them, it was going to be a lot to take those guys down. And if my opponent didn't come into them, it let me decide if I wanted to keep them there to maybe, some of the mission primaries where it's like complete an action, like Terraform. Terminators became great for Terraform because you can start that action and it's like you can't remove them from that early on. Yes, it might mean they're standing there, but you're scoring points. I feel like that's an auto-include as far as enhancements are. And then there's Sigil of Exigence. Sigil is amazing. So many different ways you can use it. You can put it on a Librarian, deep strike them in, he gets shot at, you bump them away. One I liked was putting it on a Grand Master, moving him right to center objective, and it's either you shoot at him, in which case I teleport him away. You don't move enough in the middle to shoot at him, so I just take it, and then I can hold the home center objective. So it's a win-win for that nature. It's like, okay, Sigil gets me out of there. Now you've dedicated a center. Now I can play around that because you had to bring enough in there to make me even want to pop the Sigil. Yes, charging it means the Sigil doesn't work, but we're talking turn one, moving to the center objective and just touching it with our big toe so that the opponent really has to commit in order to get into us either way. Uh, then also you put, I mean, you can put the sigil on a character that's leading a unit like a squad of Terminators. And I thought about it with like a squad of Paladins, putting Incinerators in there, and then taking a Grandmaster with Incinerator, deep strike in, hit an infantry unit, and then stand there as just like, okay, as soon as you move, I'm going to overwatch you. And then you also have the sigil, so it's like, okay, well, now in the shooting phase, I'm out of here. So that is, but again, that is on the defensive side of things. So to summarize everything with this, both detachments have very, very strong plays, depending on what you want to do. The teleport assault force is the one that's going to give you a much stronger defense and a lot more tricks to play. The Warp Bane task force is giving you more damage output. Where I fall is obviously because I've been playing the Warp Bane. That's in twofold. One, I'm playing it out until I feel like I don't like it anymore, or I don't feel like it's going to work. But right now, I feel like that damage aspect is the aspect that we need to be able to compete with other armies that have very high damage outputs. I'm running 30 purifiers now. This is going to be the test. I'm going to run 30 purifiers, and actually, you guys will see the list. I'm going to be posting that up soon. I'm trying some stuff into this, but I'm doing a lot of infantry and a lot of side cannons. I mean, just being able to have weapons that have higher strength like that spread out, the strength that the purifiers bring, and just how they're multifaceted. They're a Swiss Army knife. They can shoot really well, and they hit super hard in combat. There's a lot to be had there. Right now, it's kind of where I feel we have to lean, is we have to go into more of the damage aspect of it, because we need to keep up with other armies that can do damage. While like I said, the other detachment has a lot of defensive abilities. Teleport Assault has a lot of defensive abilities that, unlike other armies that have strats that they can pop to actually make them tougher, give them feel no pain and things like that, we're removing the entire attack sequence out of the phase. We're able to pick a unit up and move them away from the game and take them out of having any dice factoring into it at all for the time that they're in there. But it then puts us at a fact that our smaller units are still going to be easily able to be picked up. And we start to lose that MSU and have those units to do things with. And once we start playing our hand and not being able to do as many things, like once you use a sigil, that's it. That's one time. If your opponent starts to shoot at you and not move within 9, now you're getting off the field. And as those smaller resources are gone, more of their army is able to focus on bigger, tougher, harder to remove things. And with the damage output where it is in the game right now, I feel, and I could be wrong on this, but I feel like the Teleport Assault right now doesn't have enough defensive longevity to get us it back to where we are in turns 4 and 5, where we were before the data sheets, before Grotmus, where we could get into turns 4 and 5 and have enough units to still be able to score secondaries, maybe acquire a couple primaries, and run out with how well we scored early on. Now, I feel like we're getting into a point where the damage output, it puts us at a point where we can end up getting skunked and not getting anything on primaries, or not being able to score secondaries going into turns 4 and 5 that our early 1, 2, and 3 don't matter as much. So that's kind of where I kind of fall with it right now. I'm leaning more towards the Warp Bane, and I'm going to keep running it right now. The damage output of it is very strong. It's able to hit a lot harder than some other than the standard detachment is. And I like the style of the weapons we're bringing. And more on that, you'll have to check out my Harmony video and see how what I'm talking about with that, because it's interesting. I'm trying something first. I'm trying something here. So we'll see how this goes. All right, guys. That's about it for me. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.